Last Thursday, President Donald Trump tweeted, quote, "On June 10th, the United States will impose a 5% tariff on all goods coming into our country from Mexico until such time as illegal migrants coming through Mexico and into our country stop," end quote. Now, the White House says its plans to increase the tariff each month until it reaches 25% in October. Wow. New Mexico officials and the business community say this is a potentially catastrophic blow to companies across the state, especially those in those border cities. And Diane, the Journal talked to Jerry Pacheco. He's the CEO of Santa Teresa-based Border Industrial Association. He said, quote, "It's like threatening Mexico. You better do this," and you take a pistol and you point it at your own foot. It's an interesting quote. Is he right on that? And it seems like everyone's really spooked about this thing. What's your sense of it?
I think in some ways, yes, because I happen to know a small company that they import and export chilies. Their primary crop is Hatch chilies that they send out all across the world. But they also do cinnamon, oregano, and something else. And some of that they get from through Mexico. And so if their trucks are sitting and can't get across, or they're having to pay this higher tariff, then the people there, their market is going to be more difficult and more challenging. And they market in China. A lot of the nationally recognized Spanish or Mexican restaurants buy their chilies from this company. So it is, and it's a small, 6 or 7 people staff company, and that will be a major hit on them. Just like the embargo was when we were trying to get trucks across the border. It was very difficult. So and for me, and the point I'm trying to make here is that's just one example that I personally know. So I suspect that there are many others that will be a problem for. And
you're talking about this is a real problem for them, not a fake problem,
no,
not
this is a real problem.
Policy problem, but a real hard dollars and cents problem.
And when you have, and particularly, they're a small business. And small businesses are who I see this hitting the hardest.
That's right. I mean, it's a tax when you think about it.
It is a tax. It is a tax paid by the importers and ultimately the consumers.
There you go.
It's not something where the Mexican government writes a check, to us and deposits it in the U.S. Treasury.
That's right. Do you feel like the call, the governor, for example, said it could cost tens of thousands of jobs here? In agreement with that? Yeah.
Well, it's the nature of the modern economy is that you have supply chains that are very tightly integrated, in which things can cross the border, like car parts may cross the border several times before you get a completed automobile.
That's right.
So you've got the issue of tariffs, in and of themselves, which are costly, not just in terms of the money themselves, but also in terms of the cost of compliance. And so the more friction you put on the border, going to Diane's point, the harder it is to shift things back and forth, and that's going to have an enormous impact on border businesses. So the effects of this are going to be felt by consumers, obviously nationwide, but they're really going to be disproportionately felt in New Mexico.
Good point there, Eric. Interestingly, I have to imagine, this is the way my head works, I have to imagine many of those tens of thousands that potentially could lose their jobs, they voted for this president. I have to imagine a number of employers who hire these people who are under stress now, they voted for this president. How do Republicans say they agree with the president on his ideas on immigration, but then you got this other thing hanging out there on Monday? Do Republicans just sort of go quiet and wait it out, or is it time to speak up?
Well, it sounds like if you believe the rhetoric, some of them are finally going to push back. I started my career, I actually worked on the NAFTA. I worked on the autos chapter. It was actually my thesis, so the whole agreement was predicated on this idea that there was going to be a deeper level of integration. The relationship to immigration, ironically, was that by connecting more deeply with Mexico, we were going to not only help U.S. industry be more competitive, grow our own market, they're our largest trading partner, as we know, but also it was going to actually stem Mexican immigration as their economy grew. That was their biggest argument. Actually, that was George Bush's argument. By the way, was the architect of this agreement. Said, look, you want Mexicans to stay where they want to stay, give them opportunity. And it's the same principle. The folks he's trying to target in Honduras and in Central America and Guatemala, all these other countries, if they have opportunities to stay with their families and their communities, they're going to do it. But if they don't have economic opportunity, it's not going to work. By making it harder for the Mexican economy to have a thriving, integrated global economy, you actually are going to have the counter effect, which is a lot of economists are suggesting that you're likely to increase Mexican migration to the United States because you're going to actually be taking away jobs. So it's so counterproductive. I'm just hoping that somebody within the administration who has some experience will say, wait a minute, some career folks like, wait a minute, this is you're not even solving the problem you're trying to solve, you're actually going to make it worse.
That's right. Let me go back to, I'll get to you in a second, Chris. I want to go back to Diane Senator for a quick second. Eric just made an interesting point. I do want you to pick up on the Republican thing, a question I asked him as well. Actually, why don't we just go there? How do Republicans square this, actually? You know, that support the president on border issues, but potentially could be very hurt by this situation.
Well, certainly, and I would think Senator Cruz from Texas might be very interested in this, and he has made some noises about being very concerned about this taking place, because he had a close election last time.
That's right.
And but more importantly, it's hurting the people of Texas. It's hurting the people of New Mexico and Arizona. So I think that you will see more Republicans, even the majority leader has said, I have some reservations about this.
That's right.
So I don't think you're going to see, I'm just going to go out on a limb, I don't think you're going to see it go into effect. There are talks going on. I think there are conversations. I think there will be a delay in doing it. And maybe at some point there may be some implementation. But I think at this time it is, get yourself to the table. We've got to deal with this issue, and you have to do something. This is the thinking in terms of the White House, and obviously they don't call me up and chat with me.
Sure.
But
but we do.
Yes, you do. But the thing about it is, I have to use what tools I have, and this is a tool I can use because it will negatively impact your economy, not just ours. So I'm putting it all out there. I don't think we will actually see it go into
I appreciate
place.
you saying that. That's been a talk. You know, Crystal, some people are saying this is a little too much. Cooler heads will prevail. There is a Senate GOP movement that says we want to be briefed on this first before anything happens.
Absolutely.
You know, and if that's
votes are on the line and jobs are on the line too.
Exactly.
Like Senator Chuck Grassley, a Republican from Iowa, had said that the action or the tweet that he put out, I mean, breaking news as a tweet is hilarious to begin with. You know, it's a quote of misuse presidential tariff authority, and there it would be that if it actually goes into fruition, or if it actually does come up to a vote, the Senate would actually have to take their second use of overturning, you know, a presidential executive order. And what's really
that's kind of messy, though. What you just described is kind of messy for Republicans. What you just said.
Yeah,
you know?
because they're trying to show their loyalty to President Trump, but at the same time, they're also trying to protect their constituents.
That's right.
And their constituents, especially in the areas like Kentucky and Louisiana, you know, New Mexico, even Texas, that have Republican support, or in areas of Republican support. I mean, they're going to lose their jobs. They're going to lose their jobs in their companies.
Let me read you a quote from the president, Eric, just out in the Washington Post. Trump dismissed Republican senators who have threatened to block his tariff plans, saying, quote, they have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to tariffs. I don't know.
I know tariffs.
Right.
You know, the problem with this president is like when you're only, like they say, when the only tool you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. So look, this is not a real estate deal in Atlantic City. You know, this is first of all, the United States Congress, under our Constitution, has primary authority for trade policy. They delegate it periodically, which is why these agreements have to come back to the Congress. It's why the Congress has to give them something called trade authority. But there is constitutionally, which is not the first time, that this president is on very shaky ground. So even if we thought it was good policy, which it is not, the Congress has to be on board, and both parties have to be on board. And I don't want to lose the thread that others have talked about. You know, outside of the northern New Mexico oil and gas, the biggest part of our economy right now is all this border related. If you talk to the folks in southern New Mexico and Doña Ana County and so on, trade is a massive part of it. I think this is Jerry Pacheco's point. Trade is with Mexico and being so close to the border is a massive part of our state economy. To essentially be, even as a tactic to sort of threaten, you guys got to help us fix this problem, it's so counterproductive to New Mexicans. So if you're a Republican in New Mexico, like, this is crazy. If you have any contacts in the White House, call whoever you know in one of the offices and say, Mr. President, you're really going to blow a hole in the New Mexican economy.
The reality is that there is a veto-proof majority in both houses of Congress to take back control over tariff policy. And the question is going to be whether the Republicans that are really going to be in states that are affected, farm states, for example, in the Midwest, are going to be really affected by this.
That's right.
Are they going to have the courage to say, we need to take back trade policy because the president is simply wrong as a matter of policy? And just to throw out one other thing in terms of this being counterproductive, we've seen this with China, for example. So we've increased tariffs on China. That's led to a depreciation in China's currency, which has offset a significant portion of the tariffs. And this could have the same effect in Mexico as well. So it's bad policy that isn't even going to work.
Yeah,
Interesting
well,
point there.
it lacks strategy. That's the key piece. Because it's, I mean, if you're doing it everything on Trump's agenda has been done very instinctively, and I'm sure that the cabinet secretary that he has for commerce had no idea that he was going to impose an idea on this and everything too. I think the conversation really comes down to, even if this is an impulse, trade and immigration should always absolutely be separate. And because we all know that the intent of this tariff, going from 5% to 25% in October is very much because of his agenda on the wall.
Little sarcastic remark.
Yeah.
Give him his wall and we won't have all these issues.
I would have to disagree with that one too, but from this particular instance, trade and immigration should absolutely be separate, and give the guy some insight on strategy.
Senator, interesting that the president has also mentioned this is potentially a way to bring U.S. companies back. That's part of his long game here. He made that mention late last week. Is that possible in a tariff war? That American companies say, all right, I'm going to walk away from Mexico, bring it all back to the U.S. I mean,
well, you have to have the product.
Right.
And to me, that might be a long-term kind of thing occurring. But I was thinking about, I happened to see on my Honda the other day that it was made in Alabama. So, and so I'm going,
huge
but all the
factory there. That's right.
But all the parts were not made in Alabama.
Right. That's right.
So those have to come in from various countries. And I'm guessing, and I'm not an expert, I'm guessing that some of them come through Mexico or are made in Mexico.
Absolutely.
So,
Part of a huge amount of them.
So I think that we're talking about that would be a very long-term kind of thing.
It'll be interesting. Anybody want to take a vote with Senator whether it's going to happen on Monday or not? I'll start with you, Chris.
I
Do you
don't
think?
think it's gonna
No,
happen on
Eric, what do you
Monday.
think? No, not happening. Cooler heads are going to prevail here.
I can't. I mean, to Harry's point, at some point the Congress has to sort of assert its authority under the Constitution and say, like, wait a minute, we're the ones who are supposed to really be not just the cooler heads, but the folks who realize this is going to damage our economy.
That's right.
And it's going to. And even if you're trying to solve the migration problem, we've always used trade policy in addition to foreign aid to help countries develop their economies so that they can. So people who want to stay there, if you want people to stay in Mexico.
That's right.
And by the way, we forget that Mexico has huge effects on the economies to the south of them. So if Mexico's thriving, then one of the concessions is some of these folks from Central America might be able to stay in Mexico and work in Mexico.
That's right. HVB, what do you think? It's going to happen Monday?
I think it's going to happen Monday. I think the first 5 is going to happen on Monday, and then Congress is really going to have to do a gut check in terms of, are we going to reel him in this time?
Let's see what happens when we come back. With The Line, we'll explore the latest developments in the case of almost $2 million worth of secret settlements at the end of the Martinez administration.